Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review we took a look at the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, Samsung's latest premium flagship that also has support for the S Pen. When you look at the Galaxy S20 Ultra last year, that was a device that just promised so much but didn't quite deliver on everything. So the Galaxy S21 Ultra is really correcting those mistakes. And it does so in a way that I think works for the most part. It doesn't get everything right, but it gets some of the important things right. Let's start with the design. So last year, some people didn't like the fact that, that camera array in the rear just kind of popped up. It was a very big bump, and not that this one is that much smaller, but this one feels like it's a little bit more contoured. It blends in better with the rest of the device, and it is a better look. My bigger thing actually is the back, the rest of the back, which is no longer glossy, but uses a matte finish similar to the one that was used in the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which was very nice, smooth, not as shiny perhaps, but very easy to grip, and just didn't attract the same amount of fingerprints that a glossy screen back would have. The screen is slightly smaller, at just 0.1 inches less than the previous device, but that doesn't matter. What matters more so is how the screen looks, how it functions. One of the cool things here is that the 120 Hz refresh rate now applies at full resolution. So if you want to max out all the pixels that the screen is capable of and get the advantage of, just that buttery smoothness that you get with that 120 Hz refresh rate, you now can do them. And it's adaptive, so this is one of the cool things. Had it been 120 Hz at all times, the battery life probably just would have killed the battery life. But this is adaptive, so if you're looking at static text, for example, you're not really scrolling, it'll drop down to 10 Hz. If you're really scrolling a lot, if you're kind of going through a social media feed, something like that, it'll go up to 120. So everything from, no matter how you navigate the screen, that's what happens. And it actually works. I've always liked the 120 Hz refresh rates, but I really like the fact that it's combined here with the resolution. You get a beautiful display, and it just feels so smooth to navigate. It's one of those features you don't think about necessarily, and you may not have even known about it, but believe me, when you use it and then go back to the 60 Hz, you'll notice a difference. I'm not gonna say too much about performance because the Snapdragon 888 processor is very, very fast. There's plenty of RAM here. There's 128 gigs of storage. There is no micro SD card slot, so no more expansion. You could argue that maybe Samsung did that more so because of maybe they needed more real estate under the hood. I'm not sure. But at 128 gigs to start, I think it's acceptable to remove the micro SD slot. So that's I think subjective, but for me, I don't see it as that big a deal personally. What is a bigger deal is that now the phone works with the S Pen. Now this is the first phone outside of the Note lineup to support the S Pen, and it's kind of a big deal if you're into that because this may signal the end of the Note line. I personally think that is going to happen, but we'll see. In any case, you can use any of the S Pens. So if you have one from the Note 20, you have one from a tablet even, it will work on this phone. You can access the menu. When you click the button close to the screen, the S Pen menu comes up. So you can still do all those basic features that you could have done before. Even if you just want to navigate, you can do that also. There is no holster for the pen though. So if you want to buy a case that has a holster for the pen, you can do that. You can also buy the pen separately and keep it handy if you want. You have a couple of different options on how you do that. Now, again, because this only works with the S21 Ultra and not the S21 Plus or the regular S21, it is a feature that's exclusive to this phone. So now that brings me to the camera because I think that is the biggest thing when it comes to this phone. So Samsung tried to cram all kinds of things last year, and they really, really hyped up some features that frankly didn't deserve it. So space zoom, 100 times space zoom was one of the big ones that I thought was just not usable really. And okay, so they made it so that it's easier to steady the camera. So you're steadying the phone, so there's some help there, and I see a marginal improvement in output, but I don't see a usable photo at the end of the day. So it's not a feature that I'm particularly excited about, even with all the changes Samsung made. And other than spying on people, I'm not sure what use it's going to have from a photography perspective. So that aside, we'll move on. The next feature is the 108 megapixel sensor. So this again was introduced last year, and this time Samsung put in a different sensor. So it's huge. I mean, it's one of the biggest sensors you can find in a smartphone. But again, the way you can shoot at 108 megapixels is somewhat limited. Is the low light shooting better in it? Yes. But honestly, you're better off just using it in 12 megapixels or just using night mode if you want to shoot in low light or at night, because the pixels, each individual pixel size is larger, thereby taking in more light. The 108 megapixel comes in handy more so if you're shooting larger spaces, you're shooting from a further distance, you want to crop in, things like that. It can be beneficial that way. But that leads me to another feature that complements that. So for example, if you want to kind of zoom in on a subject, you have two lenses to choose from. There are now two telephoto lenses in here, a 3x optical and a 10x. Now, I was surprised at how good the 10x was. I thought, okay, here's, I don't know, they're going to combine optical with some digital. It's going to look okay, I guess, but it actually looked better than I thought. And even the 3x optical zoom is excellent as well. Some of the photos that I took and that I saw were impressive. So it is a feature that is finally useful. It may not be useful in every situation because, again, with low light, the apertures aren't very wide, so they're not going to be as good in that sense. But with good lighting and good conditions, you should be able to get some pretty good shots with those. Overall, the camera is not bad. And I say not bad because really this is a flagship device that you would expect the best from. There are some caveats here. The Pro mode is good, and I like that I can also shoot in ultra wide. The problem I have is that there's a lot of noise that can creep in depending on how you're shooting. So even shooting at 400 ISO, for example, and a relatively moderate shutter speed in low light, noise creeps in. And I noticed this especially with raw images. So even though Samsung plays up the fact that you can capture 12-bit raw, the resulting images, especially when you edit them in Lightroom, you notice all the artifacts that are in there that unfortunately the camera picked up, or at least that the sensor picked up. So I think there may be a software update coming in the future where Samsung will address this. We'll have to wait and see. But as is right now, it's not as good a camera, I think, as is presented on paper. So yes, you can take great shots. There's plenty of modes to choose from, and you can do well with them, especially when you learn them. But I think there's a lot more that they're capable of that is not present right now as of this review. That leads me to video also, because video is something Samsung played up a lot, and one of the features they played up was director's view. So this basically gives you access to all the different lenses, so you can switch between them easily while you're shooting a video. That also includes the front-facing lens. Now you can adjust which ones you want to use, so you can turn the front-facing lens off, or you can do a split screen view where one of the main rear camera and the front are in split screen. So there's a couple of different allocations that you can do here on how you do it. It's all right. I find it a little gimmicky, but at the same time, I can see the value. But again, it's got to be in the right conditions. So maybe you're shooting, I don't know, you're at some sort of an event, although these days maybe not, and you're capturing the scene and then you're capturing a reaction at the same time, or there's so much going on that you want to get a wide view and then you want to go in closer. That is kind of the idea, is that you're shooting video that seamlessly transitions from one lens to another. Again, I like the concept. I don't know that the execution is quite there yet, but with software updates, it is possible to get it better. And again, that also depends on how good the sensors are in capturing the footage that they're capturing. Pro Video is kind of the same thing. I mean, Pro Video is excellent. Like they added 24 frames per second. Great, I love that. But it's Pro Video just allows you to really control the composition of the video. So what kind of frame rate you want, and the shutter speed. I mean, all those things factor in, making for a more cinematic video perhaps than what a director's view video would be, which is a little bit more, I think, for kind of like a social media element as opposed to something that is more serious. Now, through all that, what about battery life? I mean, can the battery stand all that? And yes, it can. So a 5,000 milliamp battery inside, it holds up really well, impressively well, actually. I was surprised. I thought that I wasn't so sure it would be. But then again, last year's phone wasn't too bad either. I mean, the battery life held up pretty well, so it does here too. And the adaptive refresh rate actually is a huge factor in that. So because it just constantly dips and raises when it needs to, that ends up saving a lot of battery life, despite the fact that the higher resolution also can tax it also. The high brightness, this is one of the brightest smartphones you can find, if not the brightest. You won't need to go that bright unless you're in really, really bright sunlight outside. But again, because that can moderate you know, because you could always use auto brightness. The phone will know when you're in really bright sunlight and will boost it up to those 1500 nits. But when it's not, it obviously dials it back down. So again, some of those battery saving measures are good. Now, we should mention that when it comes to charging, you're not getting a charging brick in the box. This is controversial, of course. Samsung opted not to include, they included the cable, they just didn't include the charging brick that you plug into a wall. The rationale is basically that there is environmental concerns and that people probably already have a charger that they can use. The max you can get here is a 25 watt throughput into the phone, not 45 watt, as was the case with the previous phone. So you do have wireless charging as well. So I guess Samsung's reasoning is that there's always going to be some way to charge. I can see this being a divisive issue, but if you already have a charger, you may not care. But if you don't, you're going to have to spend some money to get one anyway. And that's my review of the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.